Geek Therapy Radio.
Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. I am your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. If you have been listening to the podcast, you know that I'm starting a new routine here where I start each show with the normal motivation that I give at the end of the show, because you never know. If you're listening to this radio broadcast, life gets in the way, you may get home before the end of the show. If you're listening to this on the podcast, you may, again, not listen to the end of the podcast, life gets in the way, you move on to the next podcast, what have you. So I like to get the encouragements in at the beginning now. So, we are all geeks about something. Embrace your inner geek. Know that you are worthy of love, both giving and receiving love. Be good to yourselves and others, especially yourself. Know that you are worthy of your own self-respect. And I think if we all kind of chip away at that each day, the world will be a better place. All right, this show is awesome this weekend. This is the Christmas special of Geek Therapy Radio. I have a lot of guests, it's a star-studded event. I've got hosts and YouTubers and friends and family on the show. Geek Therapy Radio this week is all about sharing our favorite Christmas holiday memories. And what better way to kick it off than with KTRH's own Michael Berry. Michael, what's your favorite Christmas memory?
I was 8 years old, was a Schwinn bicycle. It was my big present. It was silver with a red seat. My brother got a gold brown Schwinn bicycle with a black banana seat, and my parents still have them to this very day, and I go and look at them every time I go visit my parents. Merry Christmas all. Thanks for supporting us, Johnny, me, Ramon, the whole station, and our industry, and letting us do what we do and letting us live out our dreams.
Thank you, Michael. That's pretty cool. Does anybody else listening have a favorite present that they got as kids that when they go visit their family or their relatives during the holidays, that they still have it? Your family members still have it at their home, so you get to go. It's not even a nostalgia trip. It's like nostalgia times 100. You get to go relive your childhood, basically. Relive your favorite Christmas ever because they held on to that heirloom gift, I guess you would call it. My aunt and uncle still have an old NES from the 80s, like the original one that they got for us 30 years ago, I want to say, but it's still there. They still have it at their house, and every time I look at it, I think back to fond memories. Speaking of memories, sometimes we have Christmas memories, holiday memories that aren't always the greatest, while they are happening, but you put a few decades, a few years between those memories and now, and it's just a funny story to look back on. And with one of those funny stories to look back on is 94.5 The Buzz's own Rod Ryan. Rod, take it away, brother.
Well, Merry Christmas, everybody. I was asked to give some sort of a Christmas memory, maybe a best present. When I was asked to do this, the first thing I thought of was I'm maybe 6, 7 years old. And there was 3 of us, 3 kids, and then my parents. There was a lot of presents, a lot of little stuff. We didn't have a lot of money, but there was my mom always did a good job. Santa Claus did a good job. A lot of stuff wrapped up. So there was stuff all over the living room. And we had like a little village underneath our Christmas tree. So the presents kind of had to go all over the place. They didn't go directly under the tree. And I've always been somebody that woke up early. So I'm about 6 or 7 years old, and I'm up before everybody. And I go out there to go scope out the presents, and I'm like, yeah, this is badass. This is awesome. Why don't I just help out and go and grab all of my stuff and make a nice pile of all of my presents, where my mom and Santa Claus took the time to mix everything up and scatter it around and make it look great. I went in there and grabbed all of my stuff, and I put it all in a pile. So now my mom and dad wake up, and I'm getting my ass beat because I messed with the presents before everybody woke up. And I remember my parents really not being too happy about that. So it wasn't a great thing at the time, but it's one of those silly things that you look back on later on in life and you say, wow, man, that was a great, my dad and my mom. So it was awesome to think about that. That's right. I'm leaving you a story of me getting my ass beat on Christmas morning. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Season's beatings to you too, Rod. Thank you for that story. While I can't personally recall from my own experience any Christmas Day whoopings, there's no way that it didn't happen in my household. 4 brothers running around. I'm sure we got a whooping here and there on Christmas Day, probably for fighting over the Super Nintendo. Anyways, all right, Randy, what do you got?
Hey, folks, this is Randy Lemmon. I'm the Garden Line host of News Radio 740 KTRH. We're on from 6 to 10 every Saturday and Sunday, and I'm going into my, this will scare you, 24th year as the Garden Line host. So mine is going to be an adult story. My favorite Christmas present is adult, because once you have kids, you stop getting good Christmas presents, so to speak. But we had a beach house. There was a time, gosh, I have to do the math in my head. So about 13 years ago, we had a dinky little beach house far west end of Galveston. And everybody has a beach house, has a golf cart. Right? But we're beach house poor, you know. We don't have the money to just go run out and, you know, drop $6,000, $8,000 for a cool golf cart. So I just kind of blew it off after we'd been there for a year. So second Christmas around, when we were having this beach house, I get this panicked phone call from my sister-in-law, who happens to be staying at the beach house, saying, there is something wrong with this plumbing over here. I can't figure out how to get it. Where do you shut off the water? I told her where to shut off the water. And she goes, you might want to get down here. So I drove the hour and a half it took to get from where we live, far northwest side, all the way down. I'm driving. Oh gosh, why is it the in-laws have to ruin everything at the beach house? And I get down there, and my wife's coming with me because she knows her sister is going to be there. Brother-in-law is going to be there with their 2 kids. And we roll up, and they're not there. And finally, I was like, okay, dang it, I got to go get the thing to open the garage door down below. So I go upstairs, I get thing downstairs, and there's this package, and it says, open me. And I opened it, and it's golf cart keys. And I run down, like a little kid at Christmas time, I run down the stairs, open the garage door, and it's an Aggie emblemed golf cart. So maroon and white, Aggie emblems all over it. And since I'm a class 84, that was a really special treat for me. Now, that was it's just over 13 years ago. I haven't gotten anything cool like that since.
No. Thanks, Randy. What that story reminds me of, it's one of the missions of Geek Therapy Radio itself. It's to reinvigorate that childlike joy, that you're never too old to experience that childlike joy. So that's really awesome that you got to experience that. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up, more memories. We're going to follow up with the rest of the iHeart family here at iHeart Media. Then we're going to move on to friends and family and past guests of the show. Don't go anywhere. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. If you're just tuning in here to the second segment, I am your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger, showing you around this museum of the mind and of curiosity. And this episode this week is all about our favorite Christmas and holiday memories. So the next guest coming up, his name is Matt Thomas, and I spent enough late nights with him doing storm coverage during Hurricane Harvey. I've worked with Matt Thomas for going on 10 years now, but what a contrast between dealing with Hurricane Harvey and now talking about positive, nice Christmas memories, well, other than Rod getting his ass beat. Anyways, some of us are sports nuts. Matt is a geek about sports. See, we're all geeks about something. Matt Thomas is a geek about sports. So what do you give a sports geek for Christmas?
Hey, it's Matt Thomas from Sports Talk 790. My favorite Christmas gift, I think, as a kid was when I was 12 or 13 years old. The Houston Oilers were a terrible football team. This is pre-Warren Moon. And my mom bought me season tickets to the Houston Gamblers of the United States Football League. Jim Kelly was the quarterback. And we got such a good deal on the seats that we actually got to sit in the bleachers on the field at the Astrodome. So I'm on the same AstroTurf as the players are when they're playing the game. And so we had literally on-field seats for this brand new football league, and the Gamblers were awesome. They scored a lot of points, very excited, and it was the first time in my life I ever had season tickets to any sports team. So that, to me, was one of my greatest gifts ever, was the gift of the United States Football League. May it rest in peace.
Thanks, Matt. The Houston Gamblers. The ghosts of football past. All right, somebody's got to have a video game memory. Big Angry, what you got?
Hey, Johnny, this is Charles Adams, host of The Truth and one half of the Fox Face-Off. I'm amazing. I want to tell you I'm going to have to give you two answers. And I'm going to have to give you two answers because my parents got divorced when I was a little kid, so Christmas was a little problematic. And I always have two Christmases, one on Christmas. You know, we're always shuttled around. My dad lived in a different city. But I wanted the two presents, one given to me by my mom and one given to me by my dad, my two favorite ones. My first one's from my mom. Now Mongoose is just a mass-produced bicycle now, right? But it used to be, you know, a small outfit that built real BMX bikes before they got bought by some giant corporation. And I had a Mongoose with chromoly spokes. Now, these spokes were important because they were strong as mags, so you could stick stuff in and break them, but much lighter and had the beautiful look. The whole thing was chrome dip. It was great. I rode it for years, you know, stupid stuff, jumping stuff, that kind of stuff. I left it, when I was getting a little bit old for it, I left it in Chris Martinez's front yard, and for the first time, not locked up, got stolen, like the very first time. But I love that bike. It was a great bike, had pegs, bunny hop, and the whole deal. But honestly, my favorite gift, and it might have been my dad and my mom split the cost, I don't know, but I got it at my dad's house, was the Magnavox Odyssey 2. Now, a lot of people don't know what that is, but it's a game system, the coolest game system ever made, in my opinion. And I probably got it because it was probably on sale. Like the Atari was probably full price. But one thing that Magnavox did, other than having just a bunch of games, was it also had, it was the first game system to have and probably might have been the only, had hybrid board game / video game games. So we had there was this game called Quest for the Rings, and another one called The Great Wall Street Fortune Hunt, which were both board games that you also played a video game part. The coolest game system ever made. If you ever have a chance to play Quest for the Rings on the Odyssey 2, you should take it. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday.
The Magnavox Odyssey 2. Charles, I'm going to call it right there. First of all, thank you for sharing your memory. Two memories, actually. The bike and the video game system, but I'm going to call it right there with the Magnavox Odyssey 2. That's a deep dive. That's a deep dive right there. I would wager that most kids growing up in the late 70s and 80s were more likely, if you went to your random friend's house, they were more likely to have an Atari, a little bit later on have an NES, possibly a Sega Master System. But I would imagine that the Magnavox Odyssey, I'm not calling it super rare, but most people probably had an Atari and then a Nintendo. But anyways, what about gifts? What about Christmas presents that may have kind of steered the course of our life a little bit? Maybe you got something that motivated you into the career you have now. And that is me possibly alluding to what my boss, Justin, got as a kid. Justin, what's your favorite Christmas gift you ever got?
Hey, Johnny, Justin King, host of Black Coffee Radio and APD of KPRC 950 AM, Real Texas Real Talk, and your boss. The best Christmas present I ever received was probably a Talk Boy featured in Home Alone 2. It allowed me to do dumb radio shows, which stuck with me my entire life and caused me to end up here.
Holy crap, the Talk Boy. I never was lucky enough to have one of those, but it would have just warped my little boy mind. I had tape recorders. I used to fiddle around with those micro cassette recorders. The sound quality was terrible, but I had a blast doing kind of the same thing, making fake radio shows with a tape recorder, just going out in the backyard and recording dogs and stuff. Fond memories with that thing. All right, last but certainly not least, to represent the iHeart Media family here in Houston, Michael Garfield. We go way back. He's kind of a mentor of mine. He is the high-tech Texan, as he'll tell you. Learned a lot from this guy, tech geek just like me. Garf, what's one of your favorite memories?
Hey everybody, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. The countdown is on. This is Michael Garfield, Johnny's good buddy. I look up to that guy. You know what I wanted for holidays? I actually wanted a DeLorean. Anybody got one that I know? Ew, I'd love to. Marty! No, everybody's reminiscing on some of their favorite holiday I guess, products or times or gifts. And obviously, I'm the high-tech Texan, and so I'm very fortunate to create this brand. I've been doing it for 20 years, and I review Christmas products and holiday products for the past 20 years, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to receive a lot of these sample products and whatever. And so maybe I'm jaded, and so nothing really, is nothing I need or want right now. And so I have to go back and way back and try to think when I was a little kid. Like Johnny and I, we talk a lot about video games. And, everybody remembers their first video gaming system. I'm going to date myself right here because I'm just around 50 years old. We'll go it that way. But the coolest gift I remember is my parents got me and my younger sister one of the first really cool home video systems. Does anybody remember Fairchild? Johnny shaking his head. You have no clue. It's the Fairchild. And if you go Google this thing, entertainment system. It was very expensive. And I kid you not, that my parents bought it at Neiman Marcus. So that was like there was no Toys R Us back in the 1970, whatever it was. Well, at least not where I grew up. And so it was a Fairchild. And my sister, she couldn't give a crap. So it was all for me. But the graphics back then went in the mid-1970s. They were so cool. No one else, not only in my school, I don't think the whole city had one of these things. I know my parents looked high and low for it. And that's maybe one of the things that got me into technology. It was very interesting. And I get to play and do this as rudimentary as the graphics are right now. This is what we do. It's the sign of the times. And it's neat how fun video game systems have come up. The other one, if I'm ranking my favorite video game systems of all time, and people will go back to Atari, they'll say Pong. Now my kids play the Xbox 360 and then the PS4 and all that stuff. I'm going to go back to another one. I'm going to date myself too. People may remember Mattel Intellivision. Johnny, remember Intellivision? Oh, yeah. The Intellivision was freaking brilliant in the way that the controllers, even though they were wired controllers, they had the little pigtail cord, but it was really smart the way they had these overlays, and no matter what game you played, and they did licensing deals with NFL, MLB, and they would, if you're playing Major League Baseball, whatever it was called, baseball and Mattel Intellivision, they would have an overlay of a baseball diamond, and first base, if you're looking at it, if you touch it, it was correlating to the 6 button underneath it. Third base was the 4 button, and so you're actually controlling the players that way. They did the same thing with football, and I was just a nut for that stuff. And so, I harken back to those days, and I can only wish I still kept that around, because you know what, on eBay, I'd probably get about $3 each. People, happy holidays to you from the high-tech Texan. Let's hope we kill it in 2020.
Yeah, I definitely had to Google what the Fairchild was. Very much wood grain to be had on that 70s video game system. But a very cool memory, Garth. Thank you so much for all your help to me over the years, and for sharing your fond holiday memories there. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. We're going to check in with past guests of the show, 8-Bit Guy, LGR, Colin from This Does Not Compute. Don't go anywhere. This is Geek Therapy Radio. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I am your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger, and whereas usually I'm taking you through the mental museum and visiting different exhibits of geekdom, because if you remember from the beginning of the show, and if you're a longtime listener of Geek Therapy Radio, we are all geeks about something. Geek is no longer a negative word. It means you're passionate about something. It means you're really into something. It means you have drive and you have ambition. We're all geeks about something. So whether that's cars or working out, or maybe you're a mechanic, maybe you're really into airplanes, maybe you're really into computers and programming or audio or making music, or maybe you're a radio geek. We've had a lot of radio geeks on the show so far. Helping me out with the Christmas special here on Geek Therapy Radio. So let's move on to some YouTube geeks and some past guests of the show. My first guest this segment is Clint from LGR, Lazy Game Reviews. He's always so accommodating, helping me put out content here on Geek Therapy Radio. Just an all-around awesome guy. I'll give you one guess. For those of you who subscribe to LGR already on YouTube, Lazy Game Reviews on YouTube, what do you think his Christmas memories revolve around? You know what? I'll just let him tell us. Clint, thank you so much for coming on Geek Therapy Radio again.
Greetings, Johnny. This is Clint from LGR here. And yeah, as far as Christmas memories that I'm quite fond of to this day and still think back on every so often, one has to do with the present that I didn't get in 1995. And that was SimCity 2000 for MS-DOS, a 3.5-inch floppy disk version. I let everybody in my life know that that's the one thing that I wanted. And it had to be that version too, because computer I have didn't have Windows 95, didn't have a CD-ROM. Had to be the DOS 3.5-inch floppy version. Well, I was so sure my parents would have it and be waiting under the tree. And so, the morning comes around and go through all the presents. We unwrap everything. And I'm like, I'm sure it's any one of these. And then get to the last one and it's like a shirt or something. It's like, oh no, it's not there. I was so bummed. I tried to not make it obvious, but I'm sure that I was just moping about for the entire rest of the day through all the meals and then traveling to the grandparents and meeting with other family members, everything. I was like, this Christmas is horrible. But then it goes around to the end of that night and it's time for the grandparents to give their things and, getting some presents from my grandma, your typical grandparentsy type of stuff and socks and other things that I'm sure I don't even remember because the last gift was SimCity 2000 for MS-DOS, the 3.5-inch floppy disk version. And I was absolutely floored because my grandparents still to this day have never had a computer, didn't know anything about computers as far as I knew. And I guess they still didn't because it sounds like from what I gathered, my dad conspired with his parents to have them go out and find it and then put it under their tree. And I don't know why. There was shenanigans happening just to make it an extra surprise. And it sure was that. I never expected to see the exact right version and everything under my grandparents' Christmas tree. That is definitely something that has stuck with me. And I think about that every Christmas and play SimCity 2000 for DOS every Christmas as a result.
Thanks, Clint. I can tell you, I fully agree. One of the best feelings in the world, and this is kind of a metaphor for life, sometimes the best feelings in the world have to come after the worst feelings. You can't feel the highs without the lows. That's what life is, these crests and valleys. It's what makes it all worthwhile. So on a very materialist level, I guess I could say, looking back on it now, let's face it, as kids, we're all a little bit materialistic, especially around Christmas time. So the only game I wanted one year was Street Fighter II Turbo. It had to be Street Fighter II Turbo. Not any other fighting game, not Fatal Fury, not even Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter II Turbo. And the entire Christmas morning came and went, and I didn't get Street Fighter II Turbo, and I was the same way. I was moping around all day, I'm sure. I was very grateful for the gifts I did receive, of course, but I was still bummed in my heart that, there's no Street Fighter II Turbo under the tree. So at the end of the day, towards the end of the day in the evening, my aunt says, hey, boys, you want to go to Best Buy or something like that? And whatever she said. But yeah, so we went out and we went to Best Buy and she snuck away. But before she snuck away, she just said, okay, spend 20 more minutes in here. Just look around, but just come out, meet me in the car in 20 minutes and we'll go home. So anyways, we went back out to the car after 20 minutes. And what did she have for me was Street Fighter II Turbo. That's one of my fondest Christmas memories. Disappointment turning into joy. I feel bad about it now. I feel bad about being so mopey that I didn't get Street Fighter II Turbo, but we live and learn. We're all kids once. All right, you can't have an episode of Geek Therapy Radio with Clint on there and not have David Murray, the 8-bit guy. David sent me an audio file, and he said, I hope this works. Dude, this story reached right into my nerd heart and hit my geek nerve. I spent so much time doing exactly what he did. Oh, David, just take it away, man.
Hey, Johnny, as far as memories go, I think I'm going to have to go with Radio Shack. And it's not just one specific memory. It was more like a tradition. You see, my parents and my grandparents, they didn't really understand, all this technological stuff. And that's what I always wanted. I always wanted all these little electronic gadgets and stuff like that. And while a lot of stores did carry electronic gadgets, Radio Shack was a little bit unique in that they had this catalog. Now, granted, they weren't the only store that had a catalog, but it seemed like it was the easiest for us to get because we could just walk into any Radio Shack and pick up the latest catalog right there in the store. And they would also mail them out occasionally for the holiday seasons. And so I would just go through the catalog and circle all the things that I was interested in. And then my parents and grandparents could take that catalog to Radio Shack and point to the salesman and say, hey, this is what I want to get my grandchild or whatever. And it was really easier for them to get it. And even though Radio Shack didn't carry Commodore stuff, which was, of course, my favorite type of electronic item, they did carry, at least back then, a whole lot of really unique items that you just couldn't find in any other store. That's actually kind of one of the things that was unfortunate about Radio Shack. It seemed like the last 10 or 15 years, they just really were kind of a generic store selling, cell phones and stuff like that. And of course, I can't entirely blame them, because that's unfortunately one of the problems that smartphones have brought, is they just rained a destruction on all of these other types of markets. I mean, I used to like to go in the store or look through the catalog and look at all the different computer components and, audio components like cassette recorders and CD players and camcorders and little electronic games, little calculators with PDAs and stuff built into them, talking clocks and, just all kinds of things like that. But these have all been replaced by smartphones. And so even though we've gained a whole lot by having smartphones, and obviously I don't want to go back and give up my smartphone, but I also feel like we've lost some of the wonder of all the different electronics devices that we used to get excited about. So yeah, when I was a kid and I went to open Christmas presents, I usually expected to get quite a few things from Radio Shack.
It saddens me beyond description that my future children will not know the joy of just walking into a Radio Shack, of just smelling a Radio Shack. David, thank you for those memories. All right, my last YouTube guest is longtime friend of the show, Colin Worth from the YouTube channel This Does Not Compute, with some more awesome video game Christmas memories.
For the Christmas of 1996, my sister and I were gifted a Nintendo 64. This was in some ways kind of a we're sorry present from my parents. I had originally wanted a Super Nintendo, and I've told this story a couple of times before, but instead of getting a Super Nintendo, I had been given a Sega Genesis. Now, I was still, of course, very thankful for that Genesis, and in some ways, it was good that I got that because it exposed me to another side of gaming that I otherwise hadn't really been interested in, right? As a young kid, a lot of us were really big into Nintendo. And the Super NES would have been my very first video gaming system. I never had an NES or a Game Boy or anything else up to that point. And I really wanted a Super NES, but I was given a Genesis instead, which exposed me to the entire Sega ecosystem, and especially the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, which I grew to really appreciate and love up until this day even. But I think there was still kind of a little bit of disappointment that I hadn't gotten the Super NES and Super Mario World like I'd really wanted. So fast forward a few years and the Nintendo 64 comes out. And I was really interested in that console, especially Mario 64. So you can only imagine my excitement when that console and a copy of that game were under the tree on Christmas morning. And I immediately fell in love with that console. And that game remains probably my number one in terms of favorite console games. I just can't get over how well Mario 64 has held up. Yeah, I know the graphics aren't amazing by today's standards, but taken in context, it was incredible what they were able to do with the N64 hardware and how big of a leap the Mario franchise took from Super Mario World to Mario 64. It stuck with me, and even though I didn't get any other games or very many other presents that year, I was totally happy. I hope that the presents you get this year leave you with the same sense of wonder like I had so many years ago. Happy holidays.
Thank you so much, Colin. All right, after the break, more Christmas memories. You're listening to Geek Therapy Radio. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. If you're just joining us, you're driving around, you tuned into 950 KPRC. I am your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger, and this is the Christmas special of Geek Therapy Radio. As you can imagine by the title, the Christmas memories we're sharing here on Geek Therapy Radio are pretty nostalgic. They're very heartwarming. I'm honored to have all the guests on the show that were able to come on the show with relatively short notice. I didn't have this idea until maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, which is no time to put a show together in radio. But I'm so happy that so many people came out with their Christmas memories and shared them with me. That is so wonderful. Big thanks to every guest who's come on Geek Therapy Radio Christmas special this year. All right, my next guest is a very close friend. His name is James Sheehan, and he's always he always puts things into such a perspective that makes you think. He's really, really good at making you think. So listen to these words by my good friend James, and kind of let them work on you. It's kind of profound when you think about it.
My favorite Christmas memory is from this year. Only now on the cusp of 2020 do I realize how truly awesome my childhood was. I was ahead of the game. I was ahead of the times. Little did I know, I had a used childhood. All my Christmas gifts from Santa were kind of used, and I never got that. I never understood it. There wasn't always packaging. There was scuff marks, and then I got some excuse about how the elves were screwing with it, and at least I'm happy about that, and I shouldn't complain, right? Well, everybody at school made fun of me, especially when they figured out it all came from yard sales in the pawn shop. But you know what? Even though I got my OG Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Virtual Boy, and Nintendo 64 on consecutive Christmases from the pawn shop and yard sales, and I felt bad about it then, eBay is the new pawn shop. And when you want to hit somebody right in that nostalgia spot, you don't go to the store. They're not going to have what you want. You go to eBay and you get your old school. You get your, now they call it retro. And you know what? It's finally cool to get old stuff. And that's just a little bit of therapy that I want to share with you about being proud of your inner geek. You just never know if you're going to be ahead of the times or not. Good luck in 2020.
That's so true. And thank you, James. Good luck to you too in 2020. I know it's going to be great. How many times have we seen it in our lives? You know, the term, what goes around comes around, what's old is new again. So what James was saying is absolutely true. Whereas maybe back in the day, you might have been made fun of for clickety-clacking and typing on your old Commodore 64 or your old Macintosh Apple II computer. In 2019, going into 2020, there has been a massive resurgence in that old technology again. It's considered cool again. It's considered fun again. It's considered very desirable. And the prices of these things have actually, if they haven't gotten steady, they've gone up. Look for old Macintoshes on eBay. The prices they just go up. Those old computers, the only way is up for those prices. What's old is new again. So that's one reason I say embrace your inner geek, because even if you think it's only you that's into it now, maybe if it feels very lonely in your little community of one with whatever your geek thing is, you never know, and quite often the community grows, especially if you share that passion, your passion with others, your geek thing with others. So thank you, James, for reminding us of that. All right, my next guest is a very dear childhood friend. I've known Adam for, since 1996, when I was in 6th grade at Northeast Christian Academy. My goodness, how the years have gone by. I haven't seen him it's been too long since we've hung out. Anyways, I think this might be one of the best stories. It's not really like the best Christmas gift I received kind of story. It's just, he sent me this audio and I was rolling. I had tears in my eyes, just laughing my butt off. It's just, in a way, I've saved the best for last here. So let's hear Adam's favorite Christmas story. Oh, this is so great. Oh, and Adam's a real Cajun too, so it just makes the storytelling perfect.
Hey Johnny, Merry Christmas. This is Adam, and I wanted to share a Christmas memory with everybody on the show. One time when I was young, I was maybe 11 or 12 years old, and me and my family went to my aunt and uncle's house for Christmas. They live in Mississippi, and they live in the woods, like really, really deep into the woods. And we did this big giant campfire one night, And everybody's sitting around the fire, probably roasting marshmallows and telling jokes and stuff. And then all of a sudden my dad stumbles up and he threw something into the fire. And he goes, "Everybody run. I just threw a shotgun shell into the fire." And I guess everybody at first thought he was joking. Why would he do that? And then we see my dad running. He was really running, like he's hurrying. And that created like a sense of panic. Everybody kind of jumps up and ran, gets behind a tree. There were trees everywhere. So I'm waiting there behind a tree. Everybody's waiting behind a tree. We're all just kind of giggling like idiots, asking my dad if he really threw a shotgun shell into the fire. My aunts and my mom are all cussing him out. And all of a sudden it was boom, 12 gauge shotgun shell explodes and birdshot flew everywhere. Nobody got hurt. I didn't even hear it fly past me or anything. It might have blasted it away from me. But anyways, that's the wild Christmas memory. I just wanted to share. I love your show. I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas.
Oh, man. Grandma got run over by a reindeer, but Daddy done got shot by a sewed shotgun shell he tossed into the fire. I am going to wager that there may... what's the over-under? If you're in Vegas, what will we bet? That I'm not saying Adam's dad had one on him, but there may have been an empty can of Budweiser or two around that campfire. I don't know. Maybe somebody just tosses in live shotgun rounds into a campfire, completely sober. But it seems to me like it's more something you do when you... it's not liquid courage. You know what? I'll just leave it there. Huge, huge thanks from the bottom of my geek heart for everybody who's come on to the Geek Therapy Radio Christmas special this year. I really want to do something like this every year. If you haven't heard it yet, I did a Halloween special a year or two ago. It's back in the Geek Therapy Radio podcast archives. Everything is sequential. Just go back to Halloween of 2018, I believe. It's a special. It's the funnest thing I think I've ever done on this show up until this point. This show, doing a special like this, asking people to share their holiday memories, their Christmas memories, is right up there. It warmed my heart, and believe me, just again, the biggest thanks in the world to everybody who come on. Michael Berry came running into the KTRH studios, apologizing. "No, Johnny, I'm so sorry. I owe you, man. I didn't see your email till right now." And he got that one in there at the buzzer. I see. I put these emails out. I ask people to come on the show, fully well knowing that most of them will not be able to. But you know what? Most of them did this year, and that really touches me. Like, honestly, it's the biggest thing in the world. The way that everyone came together, not only around iHeart Media, but past guests of the show, the way Clint, David, and Colin came on. It warms my heart so much. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you for listening to Geek Therapy Radio. Honestly, I would not be able to do this without you listening to Geek Therapy Radio. Please share the joy with your friends. If you think there's somebody who might enjoy listening to Geek Therapy Radio, share it with them. But most of all, just thank you for listening. Even if you don't share it, even if your friends might not like it, you think they might not like it, I don't care. As long as you're listening and as long as I have you, that means so much to me to have you listening to Geek Therapy Radio. As Michael said at the beginning of the show, without you guys, we couldn't live out our dream of having a radio show and doing this for a living. So thank you so much. I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, if you're agnostic, atheist, Happy Festivus for the rest of us, whatever you celebrate. Just have a great one. Spend it with friends and family. Lean into friends and family. That is truly the greatest gift that we receive this time of year. Thank you so much for listening to Geek Therapy Radio. God bless you. Happy holidays and Happy New Year.